My ex left me for an aircraft heir after her father said I'd never fly high enough. Now she's back, but one sentence from me, delivered in my hangar office, while my pilot girlfriend walked in, turned her world upside down. The first time I touched an airplane engine, I was 15, and my hands were shaking. My name is Nathan Moore. I'm 27 years old now, living just outside of Wichita, Kansas, but back then, I was a broke teenager spending my afternoons wiping down Cessna windshields and sweeping hangar floors at my Aunt Trudy's private airstrip. Trudy didn't hire me because I had any special skills. She hired me because my mom called in a favor. He just needs something to keep him busy, Mom had said. Translation: keep me out of trouble. But from the second I saw those old planes up close, something clicked. I didn't want to sweep floors. I wanted to understand everything, from propeller torque to the whine of hydraulics when a gear bay closed. After school, I'd race to the airstrip on my bike, toss my backpack in the office, and spend hours watching the mechanics. Most of them ignored me at first. They were older guys, gruff and quiet, and they didn't want some kid asking dumb questions. But I didn't care. I listened, took notes on an old yellow legal pad, and studied engine diagrams I printed from the library. On weekends, I borrowed a busted lawn chair and read FAA repair manuals like they were comic books. I memorized part numbers. I traced blueprints with my finger like I was touching something sacred. My mom didn't get it. She wanted me focused on school. You're not going to college to turn a wrench, she'd say. You need a real future. But school wasn't where my brain came alive. Planes were. It wasn't just a passion. It was survival. My dad bailed when I was 10, and money was always tight. Mom cleaned houses. I knew what it felt like to go to bed without dinner. Dreaming about designing aircraft, that was my way out. By 16, I could break down a Lycoming engine blindfolded. I started shadowing Ricky, the lead tech, who finally let me help replace a fuel pump on an old 172. He didn't say much, but one afternoon, he handed me a box of tools and muttered, "You keep showing up like this. Might as well teach you the right way." That was the closest thing to a compliment I'd ever gotten from it. By 17, they were letting me handle minor inspections on my own. Word got around, and one day a local crop duster pilot said, "Kid, you're a damn prodigy." I didn't know how to respond, so I just nodded and kept working. There was nothing fancy about Trudy's airstrip, just cracked concrete, a row of tin-roofed hangars, and the constant hum of something being fixed. But to me, it was the most beautiful place on earth. It was where the dream began. One day, I'd open my own aircraft shop, not just for repairs, but for custom builds, restorations, something high-end. I didn't know how I'd get there yet. I just knew I would. Flight tech school felt like a fresh start. I was 18, finally out of high school, and surrounded by people who spoke my language: torque specs, metal fatigue, airframe composites. I was still broke, still working weekends at Trudy's, but I didn't care. I was exactly where I wanted to be. That's when I met Callie. I remember the first time I saw her. It was after class, out on the tarmac, where students practiced taxiing old trainers. She was standing next to a bright yellow Piper Cub, squinting at the engine like it had personally offended her. Her hair was tucked under a ball cap, her boots were spotless, and the Cub looked way too clean to be from our school fleet. "You need help with that cowling?" I asked. She glanced up, startled, then tilted her head. "I don't know. You look like you know what you're doing, but I don't know you." I chuckled and stepped closer. "Nathan, I work down at Stetson Airstrip. Seen more of these old birds than I can count." "Callie," she said, shaking my hand. "My dad bought me this plane. Said it'd be educational. That was 2 months ago. Engine's already coughing like a smoker." That was our start. I helped her pull the engine apart, showed her the carburetor damage, and by the end of the afternoon, she was sitting cross-legged beside me asking questions that didn't sound like small talk. She wasn't just some rich girl with a toy. She wanted to understand it. Still, her background was obvious. Designer bag slung over the pilot seat, gold bracelet too clean for someone who handled tools. And the kicker? Her dad wasn't just anybody. He was Leonard Tiller, CEO of SkyConnect, the regional airline with the fleet of blue and white jets that buzzed past our campus every day. I didn't care. We started hanging out between classes. She'd bring iced coffee to the hangar while I worked on project planes. I showed her how to change spark plugs on her Cub. She showed me how to paint small panel logos using a stencil and a steady hand. We talked about design, about what it would mean to build planes instead of just fixing them. She lit up when I told her I wanted to restore vintage aircraft with modern avionics. "That's not a job," she said once. "That's a lifestyle." The more time we spent together, the more serious it got. By the end of that semester, we were dating. Callie would come to my shifts at Trudy's, plop down in a folding chair with her sketchbook, and keep me company while I worked into the night. She was loud in all the right ways, dreaming out loud, pushing me to imagine more, to believe it was possible. But it wasn't all smooth flying. Her dad hated me from the start. The first time I shook his hand, he looked past me like I wasn't even there. Callie brushed it off. "He's just traditional," she said. "He thinks people should stay in their lane." But I wasn't blind. I saw the way he tensed when she talked about my ideas, the way he steered conversations toward financial responsibility and realistic expectations. None of it mattered to me. Not then. Because for the first time, I wasn't just working toward a dream alone. I had someone beside me, someone who believed in it too. And that felt like everything. I should have trusted my gut the second I stepped into that ballroom. The gala was hosted at some downtown hotel with marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, and centerpieces that probably cost more than my car. Waiters in tuxedos floated around with trays of tiny food that didn't look like food. Everyone was wearing black. Everyone was talking about stocks, jets, fuel efficiency, and investment rounds. I had never felt more out of place. Callie had begged me to come. "It's just a networking event," she said. "Wear a suit, smile a little, and let me brag about you." She helped me pick out a thrift store blazer and press my shirt herself that afternoon. I thought it was sweet at the time. Now I think maybe she knew I was going to need the help. I didn't know what I was walking into. As soon as we got there, her dad was already in full host mode, hugging people, shaking hands, doing that CEO laugh that sounds like it's been practiced. I tried to follow Callie through the crowd, but the room seemed to swallow her whole. I stood near the bar, watching her disappear into a sea of people in tailored suits and polished heels. And then came Bennett. He looked like a catalog ad. Smooth suit, Rolex glinting under the chandelier. The kind of guy who says, "Let's connect," and means, "I'll pretend to remember your name if you become useful." Callie's dad practically glowed introducing them. "This is Bennett Kessler," he said loudly, clapping a hand on the guy's shoulder. "His family's behind Aerolux. They're going to dominate the boutique jet scene." Callie smiled, not wide, not fake, but polite. I could tell she was uncomfortable, but she didn't move closer to me. She stood next to Bennett like it made sense, like she belonged next to him. I stood behind them, hands in my pockets, nodding awkwardly while they talked about carbon fiber winglets and IPOs. I tried to chime in once, said something about integrating retro avionics with custom-built dashboards. Bennett smiled like I just offered him chewing gum in a bank meeting. "Cute idea," he said. I wasn't introduced to anyone else the rest of the night. At dinner, I sat 2 seats away from Callie. She didn't look at me once during the speeches. Her father kept calling her darling and passing her wine like she was a trophy. When people asked what I did, she said, "He's great with planes and nothing more." On the ride home, I was quiet. She kept glancing at me like I was supposed to break the silence. "I know it was a lot," she finally said, "but you could have tried harder to fit in." I looked at her. "You mean act like I'm someone I'm not?" She frowned. "I mean understanding the business side of aviation. These people are serious, Nathan. You need to think bigger." "Funny," I said. "I thought I was already doing that. Building a future from the ground up, remember?" She looked out the window. Sometimes dreams need structure. I didn't say anything after that, but in my gut, I felt it. Something was changing. She wasn't holding my hand anymore. She was holding on to her father's world, and I was starting to realize she might already be letting go of mine. She ended things on a Tuesday afternoon, like it was nothing. I was underneath an old Beechcraft Bonanza, elbow deep in a landing gear replacement, when she showed up at the hangar. No warning. No, "Can we talk?" Just Callie in a pale blue coat and designer boots, standing next to my workbench like she didn't recognize anything around her anymore. "I've been thinking," she said. I wiped my hands on a rag and stood up, heart already bracing. That's usually not a good sign. She gave a tight smile. "We need to be honest about where this is going." I didn't say anything. I just waited. She launched into it like a sales pitch. "I care about you. I always will. But we're just on different paths." My father's right. Long-term success takes more than passion. It takes backing, connections, financial alignment. Financial alignment? I repeated, blinking. "Is that code for, you're not rich enough?" "It's code for stability," she snapped, then immediately softened. "Bennett, he's considering investing in your business idea. He said it could have potential if it's run properly." My jaw tightened. If it's run properly? He'd bring experience, resources. You'd still be involved, of course, but of course, I cut in. As long as I hand it over. She looked at the concrete floor like it might help her. "I'm trying to help you." "No, Callie," I said quietly. "You're trying to turn me into someone else. Someone easier to explain at dinner parties." She didn't deny it. I nodded slowly and pointed toward the exit. "You should go." She looked like she might argue. Then she just turned around and walked out of the hangar. She didn't look back. 2 days later, I saw the photos. Someone sent them to me, a former classmate, maybe one of her friends who felt bad. A slideshow of snapshots at a luxury ski resort in Telluride. Snow-covered decks, high-end chalets, and at the center of it all, Callie and Bennett. Matching coats, champagne glasses, her head on his shoulder like it belonged there. That's when something in me cracked. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just stopped. Stopped sleeping, stopped eating much, stopped showing up on time. I drank more than I should have, trying to shut my brain off, but it never worked for long. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, not how she looked when she left, but how she looked when she used to sit beside me, tracing blueprint lines with her finger. My work suffered. Sloppy fixes. Missed torque specs. One day, I stripped a bolt during a hydraulic test, and the system dumped pressure across the hangar floor. Ricky pulled me aside. "You need to get your head on straight," he said. "Or walk." I didn't argue. I just nodded. At night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering how I got played so easy. I thought we were building something real. Turns out, I was just another project she could walk away from. She got a new man and a clean future. All I had was a rusted dream, and and the taste of being left behind. I officially hit bottom the day I got fired. It wasn't some dramatic outburst or big confrontation, just a slow-motion train wreck that everyone saw coming. I was working on a 1940s Waco biplane. A real beauty some doctor from Dallas wanted restored to flyable condition. I'd been trusted with the final inspection, wiring, magneto checks, control cables, things I could usually do in my sleep. But my head was still somewhere else. I missed a lock nut on one of the aileron tensioners. Just one damn nut. But when the doctor did a low-speed taxi run, the control stick locked up. He freaked, slammed the brakes, and clipped a landing light. No injuries, thank God. But it scared the hell out of him. He pulled the project, demanded a refund, and word traveled fast. Ricky didn't yell. He just stood there with that worn-out look he'd had since the day he hired me. I stuck my neck out for you, he said quietly. I told people you were gifted. I'll fix it, I said. You already did enough, he replied. I handed in my badge that afternoon. With nowhere else to go, I packed up and moved back into my mom's place. The same narrow ranch-style house I'd grown up in, where the kitchen light always flickered and the heater rattled when it kicked on. My old room was still half covered in airplane posters, like the kid who once lived there might come back any day. But that kid was gone. I took whatever jobs I could find. Grocery stocker, dishwasher. For a while, I worked graveyard security at a cargo hangar, just to be near the planes again. But even that dried up after a couple of months. Eventually, I ended up valet parking cars at the executive terminal of the city airport, the same airport where I used to dream of opening my own shop. Most of the people I parked for didn't look twice at me, just handed over keys to Porsches and Range Rovers and strutted off toward their charter flights. I kept my head down and tried to stay invisible. Until they showed up. I was opening the door of a black Escalade when I heard her laugh. I looked up and saw Callie, arm in arm with Bennett, both wearing sunglasses even though the sun was setting. She looked right past me like I didn't exist. Bennett didn't. He recognized me instantly and smiled like a man flipping a coin he already knew was rigged. He handed me a $100 bill. Take good care of her, he said. Something about the way he said it made my blood turn cold. I didn't say a word, just nodded, shut the door, and watched them disappear into the terminal. Later that night, I pulled the bill from my pocket, stared at it for a long time, then taped it to my bathroom mirror, not as a souvenir, not as a joke, as a reminder, because that was the moment I decided I was done being the underdog. I wasn't going to let that be the last word in my story, not by a long shot. The morning after I taped that $100 bill to my mirror, I woke up at 5 a.m. for no reason other than I couldn't sleep. I stared at that bill until the sun cracked through my window. Then I made coffee, laced up my sneakers, and ran until my legs burned. I didn't know what I was running toward, but I was damn sure running from who I'd become. That became the routine. Wake early, run, read, work, sleep, repeat. I cut out drinking, picked up books on business, finance, operations. I watched videos on entrepreneurial strategies until my eyes blurred. I didn't have a business degree or a mentor or any money to speak of, but I had time, and for the first time in months, I had focus. The valet job paid just enough to keep the lights on, and I spent my evenings reading FAA maintenance bulletins and studying aircraft schematics the way I used to back at Trudy's. Every free minute went into mapping out an idea I couldn't let go of, a boutique aircraft restoration service. Not just restoring planes, elevating them. Vintage frames, modern interiors, advanced avionics, tailored for high-end clients who wanted both performance and nostalgia. Most people thought the market didn't exist. I knew it did. I'd seen the kind of money people dropped on Gulfstreams and Cirrus jets. And I knew there were collectors out there who had warbirds rotting in barns, just waiting for someone crazy enough to bring them back to life. The problem was getting started. That's when I met Elias. He rolled up one afternoon in a beat-up Honda, of all things, asking if anyone in the terminal could help him jumpstart his old Cessna. The airport techs brushed him off. He wasn't on the charter manifest. I offered to take a look. His plane looked like it hadn't been flown in years. Tires half flat, battery dead, cowling warped from heat. But I got it powered up. Spent 3 hours helping him test systems, drain fuel lines, clean connectors. Didn't ask for a dime. You work here? He asked afterward, wiping oil off his glasses. I valet, I said. Used to be a mechanic. He looked at me like he could already tell the story behind that sentence. The next week, he came back. Coffee? He asked, holding out 2 cups. I shrugged, took one. We sat on a bench facing the runway, watching planes take off like birds finally free. Over the next few weeks, he kept coming back. Turns out Elias was a retired test pilot, had flown everything from cargo jets to classified prototypes in his day. He asked questions, listened closely when I talked about my idea. One day, I showed him a few design mock-ups I'd drawn on napkins and printer paper. When I finished, he leaned back and said, "You know what your problem is?" I braced myself. You're thinking small. That night, he wired me seed money, enough to rent an abandoned hangar on the far side of a decommissioned municipal strip. The deal was simple. I had 90 days to show results. Make something fly. Get at least one serious client. If I failed, it was over. If I succeeded, everything could change. So I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. The hangar looked like hell when I got the keys. A rusted-out Quonset hut with a leaky roof, cracked windows, and a dented rolling door that groaned like a dying animal every time I pulled it open. There were old tire stacks in one corner, bird nest in the rafters, and the floor was stained with oil older than I was. Most people would have taken one look and walked away. I saw a blank canvas. I didn't have a crew. Just a buddy from flight school, Marcus, who worked full-time at a commuter airline but showed up on weekends with his toolbox. Together, we cleaned, we stripped, we patched holes in the roof with scrap aluminum and hung tarps to keep the wind out. I bought insulation in rolls and stapled it to the walls myself. The first week, I slept on a cot in the back corner, under a space heater and next to a stack of empty ramen cups. I had 90 days, no budget for delays, no room for second guesses. So I worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. When I wasn't wrenching, I was calling anyone I could think of who might need an aircraft restored. I made flyers, launched a basic website, and posted before and after photos from old projects I'd worked on back at Trudy's. At night, I read up on FAA regs and applied for every certification I could afford. It wasn't pretty, but slowly, it started to look like something. By week 3, we had our first client, a guy named Randall, a retired Air Force captain with a French Moraine Saunier Paris jet collecting dust in a barn in Oklahoma. It had been his father's. She hasn't flown since '92, he told me. But if you can bring her back to spec, I'll pay whatever it costs. I hitched a trailer that night and drove out to see it. The thing was half-eaten by rust, but the frame was intact, and the bones were good. I hauled it back piece by piece and spent the next 6 weeks turning it into something unrecognizable. We replaced the avionics with glass panels, swapped out the outdated wiring harnesses, reinforced the wing spars, and gave it a new coat of metallic blue paint that shimmered in the sun like glass. When we fired up the engines for the first time, Marcus let out a yell like we'd just landed on the moon. Randall's reaction said it all. He walked around the jet 3 times, hand on his chin, silent the whole time. Then he turned to me, eyes misty, and said, "You brought my father's plane back to life." That was the moment the switch flipped. Word got around. Slowly, but steadily. Vintage Beechcraft, a beat-up Piper, even an old Soviet yak came through our doors. Each one better than the last. I stopped sleeping in the corner by week 9. We painted the floors, bought a real coffee maker. The hangar wasn't perfect, but it was alive. And for the first time in years, so was I. By the end of that year, I wasn't just staying afloat. I was climbing. Clients started showing up without being chased. Word of mouth spread through private pilot forums and aviation message boards. Some came from as far as California and Florida, drawn by photos of the Paris jet and a reputation for work that didn't cut corners. I didn't advertise. I didn't need to. Everything I did was wordless proof, spotless restorations, quiet confidence. One look inside my shop, and people knew this wasn't some backlit garage. This was a place where airplanes were reborn. People who spent millions on planes wanted more than function. They wanted care, and I gave them that. Every screw torque tested, every seam polished, every cockpit customized down to the last dial. That's when I heard about Bennett's business falling apart. At first, it was rumors, gripes from clients who paid top dollar for refits that came back with mismatched trim and flaky avionics installs. One guy flew his newly restored L-39 into my shop just to have it torn apart and redone. I found 3 improperly routed cables and a cracked hydraulic fitting he hadn't even been told about. He handed me a check on the spot. "I should have come to you first." I didn't say anything, just nodded and got to work. Behind the scenes, I knew Elias had something to do with it. He built up a quiet but powerful network over the years, old pilots, museum directors, veteran aircraft owners. He started sending people my way, subtly at first, then not so subtly. He never said it outright, but I knew he was nudging business away from Bennett, helping me not just compete, but overtake. And I didn't need the spotlight. No interviews, no YouTube walkarounds or magazine features. I told Elias from the start, I don't want my face out there. I just want the planes to speak. And they did. At fly-ins and airshows, people circled my restorations, jaws slack. They asked who'd done the work. Randall would point toward me in the crowd and say, "That guy, over there, in the ball cap." I'd smile, nod politely, and get back to my coffee. Clients didn't mind. They didn't want influencers. They wanted results. And my results had a waiting list 5 months deep. By now, I had a small team, Marcus full-time, plus 2 junior techs I trained myself. We operated like a surgical unit. Fast, exact, disciplined. I paid them well. Gave them the kind of respect I never got back when I was the kid with the legal pad in my back pocket. One afternoon, Marcus leaned over the wing of a restored Piper Comanche and said, "Remember when we were patching holes with duct tape?" I laughed. "Yeah, now we're rejecting parts that don't sparkle in daylight." Success didn't come with a banner. No applause. No ceremony. It came quietly, in the way the phone wouldn't stop ringing, and the work never stopped coming. And for once in my life, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. I just had to keep building. It was a clear Monday morning when it happened. I walked into the shop, coffee in hand, and found Marcus standing over the intake log, frowning. "You're gonna want to see this," he said, tapping his finger on the clipboard. At the top of the list, under client drop-off, Kessler Aviation, Aerolux, 3R, 1986 Learjet. The name on the paperwork? Bennett Kessler. I blinked. He sent us a jet? Marcus shrugged. Looks like he didn't send it. One of his clients did. Sure enough, an hour later, a flatbed rolled up with the Learjet secured in transit mode. The pilot who brought it was tight-lipped, said they'd been flying with faulty pressurization warnings and a nightmare of electrical gremlins. Took it to Kessler's place twice. Still can't get it right. Heard you guys were better. I almost laughed. We wheeled it in and started diagnostics. I didn't expect much. I figured a few crossed wires or a sensor out of calibration. But what I found made my stomach turn. Cheap aftermarket parts. Unsealed connectors. A power bus relay that looked like it had been soldered by a blindfolded intern. We spent 2 days just undoing what had been done. It was a mess, but we got it fixed. The invoice was nearly 15 grand. On Thursday, Bennett himself showed up. He walked in like he still owned the sky. Pressed blazer, polished shoes, Bluetooth headset in his ear like he'd just stepped out of a boardroom. But there was something different in his eyes. The usual smugness had frayed at the edges. He glanced around the shop, taking in the clean floor, the humming workstations, the lineup of gleaming planes. Didn't think I'd end up here, he said, half a smile on his face. I wiped my hands on a rag and nodded. I'm surprised you didn't fix it yourself, he scoffed. My guys are spread thin. We're just not trained, I said flatly. He cleared his throat. Listen, I'm willing to talk business. You've clearly built something here. We could partner, merge operations, streamline your process, expand your client base. I've got reach, you've got talent. I just looked at him. You think I want to be absorbed into your mess? It's not a mess, Nathan. It's a brand. No, I said, calm and steady. It's a name with a track record of shortcuts and excuses. I don't do either. He swallowed hard. Fine. What do I owe you? I slid the invoice across the counter. He blinked at the number, then pulled out a company card and paid on the spot. No argument. No discount request. As he walked out, he glanced back once. You ever change your mind, you know where to find me. I won't, I said, and I meant it. Exactly a week later, Callie showed up. She didn't call ahead. Just walked in around closing time, wearing a tan trench coat, and that same nervous smile I hadn't seen since we were still dreaming in the back of my aunt's hangar. Nathan, she said. I didn't look up from the panel I was inspecting. Didn't think I'd see you again. I heard about the shop. Bennett told me you. She hesitated. You really did it. I did, I said. Without his money. Or yours. There was silence. Then she stepped closer, softer now. Things didn't work out with him. Everything fell apart. I finally looked at her. Her eyes were tired, her makeup worn. She looked nothing like the girl who once traced blueprints on my lap. I was wrong, she whispered. I thought I needed something else, but it was you all along. I shook my head. No, Callie, you needed someone to believe in you while you figured out who you were. And now, I said, rising to my feet, you don't belong in this world anymore. She flinched. Just like that. I nodded. Just like that. And I turned off the lights. 6 months later, I stood in the same hangar I once swept with a push broom and watched my future walk through the door. Her name was Riley, former military test pilot turned aviation tech CEO. Smart, direct, fearless. The kind of woman who could identify a faulty altimeter just by the way you breathed describing it. We met at a regional fly-in where she was showcasing her company's new lightweight HUD system. I'd gone to look at old warboats, left with a business card and a phone number I still couldn't believe was real. Now, we were partners, professionally and otherwise. I'd taken her to the hangar after hours, where the air always smelled faintly of jet fuel and hard work. I showed her the framed picture of the Paris jet restoration, the one that started everything. Next to it, I hung 2 things side by side, a crumpled Aviation Excellence Award plaque from the Regional Mechanics Guild, and the $100 bill Bennett had once handed me. Riley chuckled when she saw it. Is that real? Oh, it's very real, I said. That was the moment I started over. A few weeks later, I introduced her to Callie, not intentionally. Just one of those weird coincidences where you realize your world's too small to stay completely separated. She had come by the airport during a public event, clearly hoping for something. She saw Riley and me walking toward the vendor tables and froze. I nodded politely. Callie, this is Riley. Callie's eyes flicked between us. You two? Engaged, Riley said, holding up her hand. Just finalized the ring yesterday. The look on Callie's face was hard to describe. Not anger, not sadness. Just realization. The kind that hits like turbulence you didn't see coming. I smiled. Your mistake wasn't leaving, Callie. It was thinking I needed you to win. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. We walked past her and never looked back. That summer, I opened 2 more locations. One in Arizona, the other in North Carolina. Riley helped broker the deals, and Elias quietly invested in our expansion fund. We hired 15 new techs and signed our first long-term contract with a legacy air museum. What started as a single chance in a rusted hangar had grown into a name people now waited months to work with, and I was done looking for validation. I never posted about it online. No bragging, no press. But every morning when I walked into that original hangar, I looked at that $100 bill, taped right under the plaque, not for revenge, for legacy. Because I didn't build this for anyone's approval. I built it so that kid who once studied blueprints under a flickering garage light could walk through the doors of his own life and feel like he finally belonged. And now, I was home.